r/AskReddit by Reddit and chill. Lawyers of Reddit. What were you amazed to discover was illegal when you were still a student? In Canada, it is illegal to frighten the Queen. That was repealed last year. Go nuts. Scare the shit out of her. First cousins can get legally married in a lot of states. West Virginia is not one of those states. Before a Burgerful v. Hodges 2015. More states allowed first cousin marriage than gay marriage. Adverse possession. Occupy and use someone else's property like your own long enough and it becomes yours. You can even bring a quiet title action to have it titled in your name. NM Wikipedia org link. Yeah, but adverse possession in most places takes an extraordinarily long time and has multiple other rules. It still comes up, but mostly with the feckin' has been there for 30 years and we have been taking care of that strip of land for all that time. Look, we planted flowers and put up a swing set while talking about an 18-inch by 45-foot strip. Some happen in forests and a lot of adverse possession cases get resolved with a prospective easement. In England, paying for sex so long as the prostitute is over 18 and not forced is legal. Everything surrounding prostitution is not. Soliciting in a public place. Curb crawling. Owning or managing a brothel. Pimping and pandering are all crimes. Making prostitution illegal makes it harder for human trafficking victims to get help. Making everything surrounding prostitution illegal makes it easier to bust traffickers. I'm a paralegal. Not a lawyer. But when I was in school I was shocked to learn that my state's legal definition of mayhem wasn't making a public scene or causing damage, but rather cutting off a body part, or rendering it useless. Putting out an eye. Cutting out the tongue. Or slitting the nose, ears, or lip of another person. All state commercials had me thinking that it was just kind of a chaos. Edit. Not that I was surprised that mayhem was against the law, just that it was that specific in how it was defined. That's the normal legal definition of mayhem, which comes from as far back as the 1600s, when it was generally confined to limbs, as opposed to eyes or ears. For example, it gradually expanded to include any kind of intentional maiming. Then, like many words do when generally expressive, it evolved into something not technical at all. See moron or idiot for example. Hence the commercials. But the legal sense is the origin. And it is quite common to see mayhem laws in many places' criminal codes. You can't booby trap your own property. Booby traps demonstrate an intent to cause bodily harm. Liability is huge. And there are legally acceptable reasons to trespass. By the way, saying you're trespassing is not proof of trespass. True. Many states have old morality laws that are obviously unconstitutional, that nobody enforces, but that the states have never bothered to repeal. For example, in Michigan, it's a crime for an unmarried couple to live together. Legislature me.gov link. S. Oka 0 wild 5 dog so. Milligaspix page equals jet object and object name equals MCL 750-335. My hometown has a law that 2 or more unrelated adults can't live in the same house. I've assumed it was set up as an anti-LGBT law back in the day, but I think they use it now to keep people from having roommates. Edit. I promise this has nothing to do with brothels. It had to do with gay people and now is used to keep it family types living there. It is still legal in VA to brandish a weapon around a homosexual if you feel that individual is making a sexual advance. Got mugged in Richmond. This was the guy's defense. Does a whip count as a weapon? Does this mean some gay bars in VA have some very kinky flirting? I'm asking for a friend, of course. I am most surprised at people's misperceptions about their private rights to violence. Most places in the US, many people think there are lots of situations where they could harm someone with impunity. In reality, there are very few situations in which using violence is legal. Even in some situations where using violence is necessary, proving it in court, civilly or criminally, can ruin you. Violence should be your last resort. There have been 2 people arrested in recent years in my state for shooting at someone, once because a teen knocked on their door in the middle of the day. They fired a shoot gun while the teen was running away. After the teen saw the gun, so teen was not up to something nefarious to warrant running, and that was the person's second incident with a gun. Second, a woman saw someone run from a store and security chasing them, possible yelling stop thief. She started shooting in a parking lot. You know, the place all the people coming into and out of the store are going to be. She was stunned that no one appreciated her efforts. During my 2L year, SCOTUS landmark Texas v. Lawrence ruling came down. Google it. That is when I learned that up to that point, it was illegal in Texas for consenting adults to have gay sex in the privacy of their own home, and you will get arrested for it. Blew my mind that we still had anti-liberty laws like that being enforced. The public saw it as legalizing gay sex. But it was much larger than that. It reaffirmed that a right to privacy exists in the Constitution, even though it is an enumerated right. An enumerated meaning nowhere does it explicitly say in the Constitution that there is a right to privacy. It is a right that the courts have inferred from enumerated rights. In this case, the right to due process under the 14th Amendment. Pretty sure NC has some anti-sodomy laws. Possibly anti-fellatio laws as well. When I clerked for a judge, there would be some continuing education type events for judges at the courthouse where they'd learn various developments in law. At one of them, some of the judges were surprised to learn that you can be charged with possession of an open container of alcohol for a container that is closed but has been unsealed. So if I have a half-full bottle of wine, I can't cork it and walk down the street to bring it to a friend's house for dinner. The presenter said that was correct. Then a long silence. Then one of the judges said quietly, well, I'm still gonna do it. I find the defendant, myself, not guilty. Not a lawyer, but I'm surprised to know that in the UK you can legally own a human skull so long as it's not on public display. You show it dignity and not use it as a Halloween decoration. I'm pretty sure it's legal in most of the US. Without the restrictions you stated above. I believe it's going to come down to how the skull was obtained. For instance, from a legitimate archaeological dig or something would probably be fine. Actual grave robbing from down the street would not be. And as I'm just reading, it appears that Native American skulls are protected. Children's rights in regards to their property. If your parents bought you something and gave it to you, it's yours. It is not theirs to take away. And if they do, that is considered theft and can be tried for it. Source: what country? In Australia it is illegal to register a company name which suggests a connection with Sir Donald Bradman, the cricketer. Rule 6203 E(iv) of the Corporations Regulations 2001 (CTH) is to thank for that. There was a case in Britain where an RAF commander told his men his wife was into kinky sex. They all participated in raping her. The court said if the men thought she was consenting, they could be found guilty. They were found guilty. But the husband wasn't guilty because a husband couldn't be guilty of raping his wife. End Wikipedia org link. Marital rape was only outlawed in the early 90s in the UK with the precedent set by RVR. It's pretty insane and disgusting. I'd have to get my law school books out to verify these ones. But if memory serves me correct, it's still legal to use corporal punishment on students in public schools in most states. I believe chemical castration is still legal under the Constitution and does not qualify as cruel and unusual punishment. I want to say the last case was in the Kansas or Oklahoma back in the 30s or 40s. There is an episode of the practice called Police State, where a cop is shot and they arrest two suspects, A and B. The cops torture A, who confesses that B shot the cop. B is then arrested, and the DA uses the threat of prosecution to coerce B into testifying against A. If I remember correctly, this evidence would be admissible in court and would not qualify as fruit of the poisonous tree for some very arcane reason that I can't remember right now. It may have been that there was a break in the branch. But I'd have to go down that rabbit hole again. Nobody can have an ownership right in a dead body. I took a class called Funeral and Cemetery Law and that was one of the weirder things. However, there are a number of weird logical steps that can be taken to allow cadavers to be sold, to allow the body's exhibit, and to allow for wills to speak to how a body shall be handled after death. I'm sure I have others, but those are the ones that come to mind right now. Talk to me. Private discrimination. Totally legal to have a whites-only country club in the US. Totally legal to have a whites-only country club in the US. So everyone who isn't familiar with the Civil Rights Act has some context. Private clubs are the only exception. Title II otherwise outlaws racial discrimination in public accommodations. 42 U.S.C. All persons shall be entitled to the full and equal enjoyment of the goods, services, facilities, privileges, advantages, and accommodations of any place of public accommodation, as defined in this section, without discrimination on the ground of race, color, religion, or national origin. So, for example, the following types of places can't discriminate: any inn, hotel, motel, restaurant, cafeteria, lunchroom, lunch counter, soda fountain, motion picture house, theater, concert hall, sports arena, or stadium. And even private clubs can't discriminate when hiring employees because Title VI outlaws employment discrimination for all employers but very small ones. Not a lawyer, but I was very happy when I realized an illegal operation on Windows 95 had no legal bearing to my 11-year-old self. And even if my local Linux PC says future code is not in the SOTOS file, this incident will be reported. Nothing is ever reported. Not a lawyer, but I had to read the general statutes of North Carolina. And in doing so I found out that stealing pine straw is a felony. Doesn't even specify how much. 1479.1. Larceny of pine needles or pine straw. If any person shall take and carry away, or shall aid in taking or carrying away, any pine needles or pine straw being produced on the land of another person upon which land notices, signs, or posters prohibiting the raking or removal of pine needles or pine straw have been placed in accordance with the provisions of GS 14159.7, or upon which posted notices have been placed in accordance with the provisions of GS 14159.7, with the intent to steal the pine needles or pine straw, that person shall be guilty of a Class H felony. 1997 443 S 19.25 AA. What blows my mind is that I could see it as a misdemeanor, but a felony? In Czech Republic, preparing tax fraud was legal till 2 years ago, and preparing to fraud EU subsidies is legal to this day. It is illegal in my state for a tattoo artist to tattoo the head, face or hands of anyone, even if that person wants to be tattooed there. I was more surprised to learn that this law is enforced. It's a serious health and safety violation. But having just one of those means you can't operate a tattoo parlor. The history of the law is also fascinating. It was put in place to prevent the state government from using tattoos to permanently mark individuals for their crimes. No judge could ever have the words "poor impulse control" tattooed on an individual. Sorry, Mr. Stevenson. Law student here. There are so many things to mention, but I'm gonna go with the gay panic defense to homicide. It's exactly what it sounds like, and repealed in many, but not all, states so far. That the act of breaking out of prison itself is not a crime. Germany. Although if you break any laws during your escape, that is still illegal and you still have to serve the rest of your sentence. The reason is because it's not illegal to want freedom. Not a lawyer, but here's an interesting too. In essence, dueling is still legal according to sections 22.01 and 22.06 in the Texas Penal Code. The law states that any two individuals who feel the need to fight can agree to mutual combat through a signed for or even just verbal or implied communication and have at it, fists only. However, in Texas, if someone steals a horse they can be hung for it. A picture is hung. A condemned man is hanged. Adverse possession of real estate. You can literally just start using someone's property, and if you do it openly and meet a few other criteria, it becomes yours. I mean, it takes like years and years. Wasn't a student, but I learned that it is actually illegal to mispronounce Arkansas in Arkansas. America explain. I'm not studying law and will never be, but when I learned that you can turn on the light in the car while driving without being arrested, I had the feeling that my whole life was a lie. What made anyone think that was illegal in the first place? Excellent answer so far. But a fun case that comes to mind is Stambovsky v. Ackley, which famously determined that a house in NY was haunted as a matter of law in an action for rescission of contract and fraudulent misrepresentation. So, there are some states where you are legally obligated to disclose whether the house you're selling has a reputation for being haunted. Ducking like and subscribe.